Thank you all for being here. We're super excited to welcome you to our first grants webinar for Pennsylvania's 17th Congressional District with Congressman Chris Deluzio. My name is Emma Dawson. I am the grants coordinator for the district. I also help with constituent services work here, and I'm happy to share more of that in the chat. But no, I just want to welcome you to this event. We're super excited to be partnering with the U.S. Department of Transportation. So first, I would love to introduce our presenters with the Department of Transportation. And then the congressman has a video that he created this morning that he wants to share with you all as well. So I'll do that. And then we'll go right into it because I know we're all busy people. So first, I would like to introduce Ms. Shannon Hughes. Shannon is the team lead for safety programs in the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration Region 2. Shannon oversees federal grant funds that benefit more than 40 million people in New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, Puerto Rico, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. Shannon develops traffic safety workshops, mentors communities on walkability initiatives, and has lent to the U.S. Department of Transportation's guidance on meaningful public involvement. Her federal service started more than 3 decades ago with the National Science Foundation, administering geoscience grants, writing congressional testimony, federal budget requests, and reports for the National Science Board. She also led a team of military and civilian protocol officers at the U.S. Military Academy at West Point, coordinating large-scale conferences and leadership seminars, and hosted highest-level congressional, presidential, and international dignitaries for the Academy superintendent. So Shannon, thank you so much for being here. Great. Next, I'd like to introduce Jeff Engel. Jeff is the operations safety engineer with the Federal Highway Administration in the Pennsylvania Division Office. Jeff provides technical support for FHWA's PA office and Pennsylvania Department of Transportation, that's PennDOT, staff in the administering of operations and safety-related projects statewide. Jeff supports PennDOT's transportation systems management and operations initiatives. Jeff including managing, let's see. Jeff advances safety by promoting the consideration and inclusion of safety design features throughout all phases of the project development process. Other initiatives include safety in WZs and MUTCD compliance. Jeff also supports PennDOT's vehicle size and weight program. Jeff manages multiple FHWA Safe Streets for All grants and various recipient agencies across PA. Jeff has been with FHWA for 6 years. Prior to joining FHWA, Jeff worked many years in private consulting engineering, performing engineering design and management tasks on highway and bridge projects for PennDOT, PTC, NJDOT, and DelDOT, and others. Prior to engineering consulting, Jeff worked for PennDOT District 2 as a highway design engineer. So Jeff, thank you so much for being here as well.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it. Thank you.
Great. Okay. And then lastly, we're going to have a Robert Hannafin also present today. He is a project development lead with Transit and DOT, which is transit-oriented development. Robert is an urban planner and transit enthusiast with a passion for physical planning, transportation, and economic development. His past experience in San Diego, Hong Kong, New York, and Washington, D.C. has focused his interest and understanding of the role that transportation and planning have on the built environment. His career goal is to elevate the practice of integrated multimodal transportation and land use planning decisions. So thank you so much, Robert, Jeff, and Shannon, for being here to represent the U.S. Department of Transportation.
Our pleasure.
Yay. Okay, so before we get started, I have a message from the congressman. And so I'm going to share that really quickly for everybody here.
Thanks for joining my Guide to Grants webinar. You'll be in very good hands with Team Deluzio's grants coordinator, Emma Dawson. There's so much good that municipalities and local organizations are doing across our region. I know a lot of that work depends on funding. Applying for federal grants can be complicated and confusing. So we wanted to make it easier for PA-17 organizations to get the funding they need. So we created streamlined grant processes in my office. You can request a letter of support and can request federal funding research support. You can download our Guide to Grants booklet or subscribe to our grants newsletter or meet with the team. We're happy to sit down and learn more about your funding needs. And all this is more on our grants information page on the website. If you have questions, you can email us. That's pa17grants@mail.house.gov. I'm proud to serve the good people of Western PA. Of course, beyond federal grants, if you need help with a federal agency, do not hesitate to let me, my team know how we can help you, your team, and your loved ones. Thank you.
Great. So on behalf of PA17 and Representative Deluzio, we'll go ahead and get started. So Shannon, I will pass it over to you if you want to share your presentation here.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Emma, and thank you all for joining this afternoon. It's a real privilege and treat to be joining the fine folks of Western PA. Give me just a moment here while we get all the technical stuff up and running. And there we are. Hopefully everybody is able to see the screen. Again, on behalf of the DOT at the federal level, welcome, welcome, and thank you all for joining us. You're going to hear, as Emma said, from three of your partners, what we like to say, your friendly feds in the field. So all three of us today are speaking to you from the context of field representatives who don't work inside the Capitol Beltway necessarily, but are more sort of direct grants administrators, technical assistance providers, partners for not just state DOTs and other state level agencies, but also locals. So it's a real treat to get to have some FaceTime with y'all this afternoon. So what we real briefly want to dip into first is what is the bipartisan infrastructure law? In the unlikely event that you've not heard of this, this is the current federal transportation legislation that authorizes us to operate, right? Authorizes us to not only continue to give grant funds through the states and often to municipalities through our various modes, but also very exciting, starting in 2021, is this tremendous, new level of funding and new level of investment to really make some long overdue and sweeping changes, not only to improve public safety, climate resilience, create jobs, but to deliver a more equitable future. I think we have somebody who's having fun drawing. So, just a couple of highlights under Bill. One of the areas that the administration is very focused on is sort of undoing the damage of policies from past that set up just inherent inequities in our built system. Terrible practices like redlining and things like that kind of cordoned off and separated communities, leaving safety, access to healthcare, jobs, education, almost impossible for certain segments of America's population. We're also taking a really careful look at how to prioritize vulnerable roadway users. Those would be folks who are walking, cycling, older transportation modal users, folks who are trying to access transit. We'll get more into the details of that a little later. Bill also works to reduce our reliance on fossil fuels by expanding alternative fuel vehicle infrastructure and by building more sort of automated vehicle to infrastructure connections so that, we're not continuing to contribute to climate change. And then with that, I'm going to invite my partner, Robert, to chime in on behalf of FTA.
Robert, I think that you are muted. I'm so sorry.
No, I am sorry.
Okay.
I was just saying thank you, Shannon. A great way to kick it off. And thanks, Emma, and everyone for the ability and opportunity to kind of speak to you all. As Emma mentioned, I kind of play around in the land use transportation sandbox. I recently actually just switched over to the Federal Transit Administration. But before that, last month, actually just a few weeks ago, I was working in the Office of the Secretary in the Build America Bureau, and the Bureau does financing and technical assistance. I focus primarily on transit. Sometimes there's always that rail nexus. So I'm going to talk more broadly about railroad safety and rail safety, and kind of weave in some transit elements. Before I even get into that, it's worth noting the infrastructure law does have tons of new programs. They include technical assistance programs. DOT does have a navigator, the DOT Navigator, which if you sign up like on the listserv, that's I think monthly or I don't know, weekly or bi-weekly updates on like upcoming opportunities. So I'd highly recommend that, because honestly, that's my go-to source to figure out what's going on in DOT. So much of the bill money is going to DOT for new programs. So highly recommend subscribing to that. I can put the link in the chat. So onwards to rail crossings, should come as no surprise to anyone living in Pennsylvania or even Southwest Pennsylvania, that there are railroads everywhere. There are railroad crossings across your communities, as demonstrated by this slate of railroad spaghetti map on this page. And so there's a lot of opportunities, obviously, for conflicts. And DOT does have a number of programs, thank you, that can address some of these conflicts, right? Whether it's eliminating railroad crossings, right? Grade separation, other types of improvements to signalization, right? To improve safety, to improve access. There's all sorts of different types of projects. This is just like a list of eligible projects. And in terms of eligible recipients, it could be states, different agencies within, local or regional government, federally recognized tribes. But yeah, the purpose of this is says in the name, is to eliminate these railroad crossings, reduce the conflicts between railroads and modes. This is administered by the Federal Railroad Administration. And if you go to the next slide, this is another FRA grant program, CRISI, which has been around for another years. Similar goals, it can be, at least in terms of eliminating crossings or improving safety, all sorts of just planning activities, studies, safety programs, there's trainings. I kind of ran out of room on this slide to list all the things. These are all on the respective program web pages. These are two really specific programs funded through bill that can go towards these improvements to reduce the number of conflicts. Also just highlight really quick, this is my last slide, but I didn't create a separate slide for this. I'd also monitor the upcoming announcements for apportionment. So there's going to be redistribution from FHWA to the state DOTs, and my FTA or FHWA counterpart may speak to this. But there are opportunities to flex funds from FHWA to FTA to spend it on projects that pertain to station area access when it comes to transit, ped bike access, reducing conflicts, all those types of improvements that kind of comprise a transit-oriented or transit-focused community that aren't necessarily like a transit station themselves. So there's many different programs out there. And like I said, I'll send a link to the DOT Navigator. And with that, I think I'll pass it over to FHW colleague.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, thanks, Robert. So I'll just jump in on this slide here, and it is simply changes to the Railway Highway Crossing Program. And this really is more tied into, whoops, went too far. Go back one slide. We'll just talk just for a second on this.
Sorry about that, Jeff.
Not a problem. Yep, still rail. But it's actually tied into the Federal Highway Administration coordination with PennDOT on the HSIP program. This is like a subset into the HSIP. So we wanted to put this in here. It's not necessarily a discretionary grant that we're talking about today, but there were some changes to this RHCP program. And you can see that it basically clarifies funds that we want to protect rail highway crossings, for pedestrians, not just the vehicles crossing the rail. So it was just sort of clarification in the bill. We've increased some funding for that locals can get, paid all the way up to $100,000 for like eliminating a crossing for their efforts to do that. It was previously $7,500, so there's some more money available there. And the federal share went from like 90% up to 100%. So any folks out there that have rail crossings, You want to maybe work with your MPO, RPO, whatever, get to PennDOT and possibly get a project in programmed in through HSIP to do some work on crossing. So next slide, Shannon. And so bridge infrastructure, everybody's interested in the bridges. Basically, I'm going to follow with 3 slides right here. There's a new bridge formula program. This, again, is not discretionary. This is going to states, but previously, monies for bridges were coming out of like the NHPP program, which was roads and bridges. This is a separate program that now has been set up. It is through the states. However, you can see like other key provisions here, that bottom block says benefits for off-system non-federal highway bridge projects. So there's a requirement that 15% of these bridge formula program funds, which is a pretty good big chunk of money, 15% is reserved for off the federal aid system. And the federal aid system is, it goes down to rural major collectors is on the federal aid. When you get to a rural minor collector or a local road, that's off system. However, so these funds are set aside for that. So you sort of have to, if you're locals, you have to, again, same thing, through your MPO, RPO, whatever, get to PennDOT. If you got a locally owned bridge, there's money tucked away in here for those off-system bridges. It now is 100% Fed share if it's owned by a local agency. I don't know if it was an 80-20 match before, 90-10, there was various things going on, but 100% Fed will pay for an off-system bridge if you can get that in the program, in the TIP, through your MPOs, RPOs, and PennDOT. Next slide. So this is new. This is a discretionary, and this is where you folks can chase these things. As Robert said, hey, you go on, through that DOT Navigator, you kind of keep on top of things or whatever. But I know Emma, I think, is going to share a page later on that has links to various sites, to the FRA site, to the FHWA site, which has a list of all discretionaries in there. This is one of them that's in there, so you can click on a link and get some more detail. But in general, this new program here, you can see for eligible entities is MPOs, local governments, eligible projects must be on the NBI, which National Bridge Inventory, which means it has to be a bridge. It has to be like over 20 foot long. So your locals can't come in with something that you've got a 16-foot long bridge. Unfortunately, this program won't cover that. But if you have bridges that are over 20, that is considered NBI. There's a big chunk of money in here. This program is broken down into 3 subcategories. There are planning grants, there are large bridge grants, and then there are bridge grants. And the planning, the city of Philadelphia just received a nice grant to figure out how to address all their bridges, kind of come up with a planning program for that. So that's a grant that's available to you folks. The large bridge is like when you have a structure that's over $100 million. I don't likely locals probably aren't owning a bridge that's over $100 million. Recently, Pennsylvania, the South Bridge in Harrisburg received a large bridge grant. And then the third sub-program grant is for bridges, and that's less than $100 million. Every year, every state is going to get 1 large bridge grant and 2 bridge grants handed out from USDOT. I think Pittsburgh, I'm not sure if they were awarded the bridge grant program, but I know they were chasing one, and I think that's a possibility that they may have received some funds through this program. So I think that's the biggest thing for this area. This is a new program, and it's for direct recipients to chase after. Next slide, Shannon. And then just quickly, other bridge-related provisions. So, the bipartisan infrastructure law basically just kind of affirmed up a little bit the requirement that when DOTs, do bridge work, bridge deck replacement, major rehabilitations, that they make them available. They provide for safe accommodation to bikes and peds. It's always sort of been the case, but the verbiage is a little bit stronger here. There's a few conditions in that where maybe a DOT may not have to address, and I hate to say that, may not have to, but if it's a very rural area, there are no pedestrians out there, it could be like an exception to the requirement to provide for safe accommodations. But this is something I just want you folks to be aware of, that the PennDOT is working on this. They're through PennDOT Connects, and this is where locals should really participate in this. PennDOT, either in their planning process or after planning, maybe if a project is on the tip, they will have a scoping meeting and they will invite the locals to that. And that's where you folks want to be involved. I've heard that sometimes locals might not respond or whatever. Boy, that's your time to really voice what you have going on locally. Get your voice heard or whatever. The state might not necessarily know what's going on locally. So you folks do. So just wanted to point that out as far as the bridge. Roadway safety. Basically, again, go to when you receive that the discretionary grants or the links to the various sites. You want to go in there and take a look around at some of those links. When you talk about roadway safety, the HSIP is one program here that, again, this is a state funded program. However, locals can get projects funded through this. I don't think it's been very successful in Pennsylvania to this point or whatever. But local projects are eligible. What changed with the bill was it adds eligibility for specified safety projects, including non-infrastructure safety projects like education, research, enforcement, safe routes to school efforts. Pennsylvania, for the most part, is spending this. PennDOT is spending this money right now on each of these tasks. Again, to get at some of this stuff, you got to go through your MPO and RPO and try and find ways to get an HSIP project in your neighborhood. You can see these bullet points here: rail, highway, crossing grade separation projects, obviously, fall right into HSIP. Traffic control devices for peds and bicycles. It can get all the way down to the local level if you can work it through the MPOs, RPOs, and PennDOT. The vulnerable road users, that's new, and basically the state PennDOT needs to do a safety assessment on vulnerable road users. They have in this last go around. And they're addressing that, and there's a new special rule here for states with total annual VRU fatalities comprising greater than 50% greater than a total annual crash fatalities. So if you got 1,000 fatalities, 150 of them involve VRU, meaning peds and bikes, but primarily. The state then is required to spend money on specific projects that address the VRUs. And so they need to pull those funds out of other funds, out of highways and bridge funds. But that's new. So the only other thing I would have mentioned is as far as programs go, Shan's going to talk some time here about the SS4A, the Safe Streets for All. That's the big one that the locals are discretionaries. A lot of them have gone out in Pennsylvania already. I'm sure some of your locals have found that out. Shan's going to get into the details of those, so I'm not going to say much about that. When you go to our website and you root around there, a couple of the other discretionaries that other locals can get after would be a RAISE discretionary grant, RAISE. And that's like for if a project can make significant local or regional impacts. The city of Philadelphia got some really nice RAISE projects, some really nice money. And it's all about, those projects are all about safety, improving things around school districts, various things for VRUs. RAISE, I mentioned, reconnecting communities. That Shannon had just mentioned that or whatever. Take a look at that. Down in Philadelphia, the reconnecting community. City of Pittsburgh already has done some work in that area. And then a third one is Protect, which is kind of an oddball one. PROTECT. But locals can actually, if you come up with a plan for evacuation, if you've got a situation where you've got a dam or anything that could, create a hazard for your residents, you could actually get after protect funds to come up with a plan for, evacuating residents. So you might want to take a look into that one as well. So with that, Shane, I think I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks so much, Jeff. Really appreciate it. And just want to clarify for everybody's awareness, it looks like there are two Shannon Hugheses on the call. I promise I'm the real thing. I, may have a mystery twin out there somewhere, but no, it's really me. Um, Weird stuff with Zoom, I'm sure. I know, look, we're feds. We tend to throw a lot of acronyms out there, a lot of things that perhaps you'd really never kind of heard these terms before and stuff like that. One of the wonderful things that Emma's going to be able to share after the fact is a single page set of links to all these grant opportunities that we're kind of touching on today. That'll hopefully be something that you can take your time with and makes it a little less mysterious, rather than Fed speak. But one of the things that we're really challenged to do right now is to think about our roadway safety system, our roadway system through a brand new lens, right? I know I mentioned early on, Bill is transformative. It's, one of the biggest investments in our transportation network that we've seen since the national highway system was built. Um, Unfortunately, our roadways have become far, far more too dangerous for folks who are not just in cars, but more predominantly outside the vehicle. And that sort of disparity issue of who is more grossly overrepresented in traffic crash violence often coincides with communities who have been historically marginalized and underserved. And so the department has taken this very intentional safe system approach that recognizes that, guess what? We're people. We're gonna make mistakes. But our system and those who design it should be more responsible for making sure that there's layers to protect us from ourselves, basically. It also recognizes that these key elements that you see here on the screen, not just, better engineered vehicles with better technologies to protect us, better designed roadways and communities that naturally slow cars down and provide appropriate speed limits and things like that, but also that critical post-crash care element. And this is a really neat one to highlight because, as you all well know, Pittsburgh is the birthplace of our national system of paramedics with Freedom House. So wonderful shout out to the post-crash care partners there. Again, a safe system fundamentally creates redundancy so that if one part fails, a human decides to, for example, text behind the wheel, or, the vehicle that they're driving is not outfitted with anti-lock brakes or automatic lane control or something like that. Those other pieces of this system are going to protect from not just, it's kind of difficult to imagine a world without crashes, but the more we can minimize the severity, minimize the occurrence of serious injury and death, the better off we are. Again, you've heard us throw around ideas and notions like, these funds can be used for enforcement, these funds can be used for infrastructure or for education. These are still important elements of our system, but it's a more sort of traditional look at the way that we are trying to get to a much safer, more equitable, accessible roadway. The traditional approach has been to look at crash data to figure out how to invest in our communities. And unfortunately, that's after too often somebody has been hurt seriously or killed. The safe system approach is trying to take a much more proactive viewpoint. And so, as you'll hear in just a moment, there are a couple of really exciting federal grants to get to that. In the traditional approach, we talked about, who's the most dangerous driver out there and how can we punish them? What we're looking at now is anticipating that human beings are going to make mistakes. Quick example, I was at the Distraction Action Forum in Washington, D.C. last month. And through the work of one of the contractors there that had done a deep data dive with insurance companies, they did a survey of drivers who were willing to participate in a naturalistic study, have a camera in their vehicles. What did they think of seeing people texting behind the wheel? How did they feel that behavior, was? And basically everybody said it's awful. So dangerous. Just completely, I could not, I can't imagine, these people are so, so dangerous and so distracted. And yet, even knowing they had a camera inside their car, 78% would navigate or text or take a call. We are victims of really, really wonderful technology with these things, right? So just a quick example, like we're going to make mistakes. It's really, really hard to blame a single person for the failings of our transportation system. So while individuals can be responsible, we need to take into consideration that this is a shared responsibility with those who engineer the way that we move. Equity, as I mentioned, is a really central focus of our administration's National Roadway Safety Strategy. As you can see here, traffic crashes are not just a leading cause of death for young folks, but absolutely disproportionately impact people who are uh, lower income, rural, Black and African American. The absolutely most dangerous place and person to be in this nation today is an Indigenous person. And why? Because we have failed at keeping their roadway networks, safe, well designed, well engineered, and because there's just so many other factors at hand. So the crisis is not evenly experienced by all, and it's unacceptable and totally solvable. One of the highlights because of this in a lot of the grants, and particularly the NHTSA money that flows through PennDOT, you heard Jeff mention, is this requirement for funding recipients to conduct what we call meaningful public engagement. No longer is it okay for the engineer to walk into a town where he or she has never lived and design a sidewalk based on specs on a roadway that they've never visited, right? We need to involve communities. We need to elevate and amplify voices in helping to determine the way that their whole world is going to be designed and laid out. If they don't know that they have a voice in shaping the way that they can get to school or work or the bus stop or the laundromat, it's up to us, those who have the levers and the policy making folks, to be able to come and help them, right? So it's more of a directional two-way dialogue and less of that one direction, I am telling you what to do because I'm the expert. Really important in a lot of the grant opportunities that you'll see coming up here. As we've been teasing at, here it is. Dun, 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 dun. The US DOT is proud to announce that we have put together a Safe Streets for All discretionary grant program. Now, right now, the fiscal year 24 grants are closed. So I'll ask y'all to keep in touch with Emma and keep your eyes on our website because we're expecting that the fiscal 25 opportunity should be open for applicants in the next 60 to 90 days. But this is a really big deal. This is an opportunity for you, the municipality, to receive directly from the federal government a significant push toward helping either a planning grant or an implementation grant. And we'll get into that in just a moment. Eligible recipients, as you can see, and you heard Jeff and Robert both mention metropolitan planning organizations. What do we mean when we say political subdivision of a state? Basically a city, a town, a municipality. So any of those sort of, localized areas, federally recognized tribal and indigenous groups, and any of the multi-jurisdictional groups that are comprised of the above. So for example, in Pennsylvania, where you have large rural swaths of areas, right? It might be difficult for a tiny crossroads rural village to apply for an SS4A grant. It might be more feasible just because too of the connections in your rural roadways for you to think about partnering with other municipalities in that region or, maybe even a county or region-wide effort. I mentioned that there's kind of two different flavors of SS4A grants. There's the one up front where it's planning and design, and the second is for implementation. I can tell you folks, the requirements to apply for these grants are so relatively simplistic compared to a lot of federal funding streams. So again, can't encourage you enough to just stay tuned and stay in touch with Emma and the congressman's team to try to find out when the fiscal 25 announcement goes. But this is just a quick couple of examples of the types of planning and demonstration activities that you might want to take advantage of with that first SS4A grant. If you've never received one before, you could use it to develop your own Vision Zero action plan, your own highly localized safe system approach, right? You could use it to do walking safety audits or targeted equity assessments. Utilize the vibrant partners you have in your communities who perhaps have not been at the table when it comes to these conversations. It's really going to make a difference. And the second phase, of course, the implementation grants. Those are when you get to actually take all those cool plans and put them into action. Importantly, you have to have received a planning and demonstration grant before you can go to this second phase of the funding. A lot of metropolitan planning organizations are taking care of these in conjunction with municipalities. So be sure to check in with yours. I know that there's a really vibrant one in the Pittsburgh, Allegheny County area. The implementation grants do have a local share requirement, but it is only 20%. So again, hopefully if you can kind of bunch in a way that makes sense, that becomes a little bit easier to achieve. And I'll leave this up for just a hot second so you can scan the QR code. But again, I know Emma is planning to send a sheet that's got kind of a summary of all the links of grant opportunities that we've talked about today.
Yeah. Shannon, thank you so much. And Jeff and Robert, I really appreciate you all just going through a lot of the stuff. Shannon, if you could put that screen back up really quickly, I'll just talk briefly about what we can do as an office. So today we just went very, briefly over some rail safety, federal opportunities, bridge infrastructure, and road safety, as Shannon just talked about as well. If you would like to learn more about those particular kinds of federal funding opportunities, you are more than welcome to reach out to our office, and I can help get you in touch with these wonderful people. The best way to do that is to email pa17grants@mail.house.gov. I will also just quickly put all of this in the chat so you can have it. But yeah, I'll go very quickly through this, but essentially the best way to learn about these NOFOs when they're coming out, like Shannon said, for the next fiscal year, we want to be, really prepared for when that comes out. You should subscribe to our grants newsletter in the district. I'll be putting out a newsletter monthly with all, updating NOFOs, shouting out different folks in the area that have won different federal funding. Another way that we can help as an office, you can request a letter of support from us. I have that link in the chat for you. If you have an application that you're preparing and you'd like to request a letter of support from the congressman, you're welcome to request that and attach it to your pre-written application. This is new for us as an office, but you can request a federal funding research support now from us. And so if you're interested in just knowing what's out there for a very particular project priority, you can, use the form that I have in the chat here to request a report that has about 10 to 20 federal funding opportunities that we can congregate for you in a list so that you can just keep those on hand as a municipal team or as an organization or as an individual. And then, yeah, I, with the help of Team Deluzio, have created a federal funding booklet. It's a guide to grants booklet that goes through a lot of different resources and definitions and ways that we can be helpful. And so you're welcome to check that out in our website as well. And then, yeah, lastly, if you need help with anything federal agency related, whether it's an inquiry or a personal, concern, you're welcome to call our office. We'd be more than happy to help you. We have a team of wonderful constituent services representatives, who will answer your calls. And so feel free to call our office, at 412-344-5583 for anything. Even any of these things are welcome to call and we can walk you through that process together. But yeah, that is everything we have for you today. I want to again thank our presenters from the U.S. Department of Transportation for helping put this on today. And as mentioned, I will be sharing out this recording as well as all of the resources from the presentation and our office's resources in a follow-up email to all of the registrants. So yeah, don't be, a stranger. Feel free to contact our office and we'd be honored to assist you. But yeah, I don't see any questions in the chat here. But if anybody does have any very specific questions, feel free to call our Carnegie office or email me and we can go from there. All right. Well, thank you all so much again. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Emma.
Thanks, Shannon. Bye.
Bye.